icebreaking session outside, and we kind of agreed on some questions, and I'm going to pose those to all of you. You know, the topic is very interesting, role of general counsel in business operations, and as we all know, it's a very complex role. They are the leaders at the center of most critical business activities. There's no doubt about them. So let me start with my first question with the only, not the only, the second man on the panel. Mr. Sundram, we spoke about, you know, that when you look at legal departments in-house, they're always seen as a cost, right? There's a perception that it is a cost. While as if you look at the larger picture, there's definitely a value add, but that narrative, that conversation is never highlighted. What is the reason that it's still seen as a cost primarily? How can we alter this perception? Is there anything happening on that front?
So thank you so much, Rohil. Let me inform the audience that Rohil is not a lawyer, and when we were doing a small chat outside, on the rep and warranty, Vaibhav, you mentioned about rep and warranties, he has taken a warranty conditions that we will protect him. So we are bound to protect him. So coming back to the question, see Rohil, this whole concept of legal department being a cost is an old concept now. This we used to debate some 10 years back, but now it is no more a debatable point. Organizations are not debating whether legal is a cost. We as lawyers, as in-house lawyers, we bring a lot of value to the organization, be it in terms of the non-litigation piece, be it in terms of the litigation piece. And the more important role that we as lawyers play is that we have an eye on the business operations, and therefore we know where the business is going wrong and on what decision they should take before actually deciding on a particular set of business. And therefore, we also ensure a preventive litigations. And therefore, if you talk about the preventive litigation piece, we are saving a lot of costs to the organizations. Having said that, like any other business unit, we also have a budget, but we manage our budget very, very judiciously. And to answer your question, we are no more a cost, we are a value addition to the entire.
That's great. I think the perception that has changed, but is that the same case with startups, Ms. Budhiraja? Is it seen in the same way as Mr. Sundaram pointed out?
Thank you so much. Happy to be part of this esteemed panel. Again, you know, I will totally endorse, you know, Mr. Sundaram's view that the role has evolved. And it has evolved for good. You know, we as general counsel, even we and as our teams, you know, we have a seat on the table now. When the CXOs talk, they do call the general counsel in that meeting, which is, you know, which is maybe a product strategy or a business strategy, which they are discussing. Because, you know, I have been part of a regulated business for most of my career. You know, I've spent in fintech and startups. 5 years back, 6 years back, you know, there is a pilot. I mean, I can give some anecdotes in the sense that, you know, a product manager has thought of something, they're taking some tool, or they're making some kind of product. They've started the project, the pilot has happened. Suddenly, the invoice is pending for the vendor or for, you know, or for the service provider. And the product manager or the business person comes running to us and says, we need to close the agreement because the invoice is pending. Now it's no longer the case. You know, we are involved in the beginning, like when the product is being strategized. Basically, the product document is called PRD. And in fact, you know, in my company, and I've heard of many fintechs or regulated businesses, each legal SPOC is assigned with each product manager, you know, to understand that PRD, whether the product flows, the money flow, the knowledge flow, the information flow is compliant or not. So I feel that role has evolved and evolved for good. We are no more like a cost function. It's more of enablement of the business. No one, you know, basically actually refers to us as a support function anymore. So that has been my experience in the last 8 to 10 years.
And that's very heartening to hear that, even in the startup world, it kind of resonates in a similar way. Ms. Bedi, your take on this, the same question.
So I think I will take a step back. I would say that we ourselves as lawyers need to first believe that we are not the cost center.
That's
and
an
I
important
think the
point.
starting point is that, and I'll give you a few examples of how, we've sort of, and I in my own experience working for in-house for about 23 years now, we have evolved. We actually as lawyers go after business opportunities. And it could be as simple as account receivable. And we pin ourselves on a target and we say, we'll find the legal budget out of the recoveries we are going to make. And we are also going to increase the quality of service to the business through our own endeavors. So at some point in time, me and my team, we were chasing an opportunity of almost 40 to 50 crores, which is sometimes a single line of business may not be able to manage. So I think it starts with our own mindset change. It starts with our own attitude. And if we consider ourselves to be cost centers, we would be. But if we choose to look at ourselves as business lawyers and people who are equally invested in the commercial success of the organization, we'll come up with our own ideas.
It's a very, very important point, that self-perception, I think because we were having this perception for a very long time, it has got ingrained, I think that doubt may be still there. Do you agree, Ms. Mehtani, on what?
Absolutely agree with the views. I would like to sum it up saying that, it boils down to, it's not about cost anymore. It has evolved. It is about the value add. The very, howsoever cliched it might sound, we are the general counsels, and it, revolves much more rather than just being restricted to a strict legal view. It goes much beyond that. The legal department in itself and the general counsel is embedded in the business now, and it's totally not about cost. It's the value add that the business is seeing coming from them, and that's why you've earned the seat at the table. And the discussions have gone way beyond. And in fact, in the role that I am leading, I also have, maybe because of the business that we are in, I also have a revenue vertical that I'm leading, where some of the lawyers in my team who are experts in certain fields are providing services to the wider organization. So opportunities like that are also there, where you can also be seen as a revenue vertical.
Wonderful.
And Rohil, just to share my own experience, I mean, for last 7 to 8 years, I have been in part of the leadership team in a couple of organizations that I have served. And I can tell you that I have been involved in major decisions of the organizations, be it on the business side, be it on the policy formulation side. And I have been involved in a lot of critical decisions that we all take collectively, before jumping. And therefore, the evaluation of the risk, the evaluation of the legal possibilities of doing that particular set of business, that is where the lawyers come in, and they do a real good job for the organization in terms of warning them that these are the red flags. And if we want to do it, this is how we should do it, but these are the possible consequences. So therefore, legal is no more a cost.
Right.
And Amar, to just add what he said, it goes, of course, we have to, caution as what could be red flags. But since if you're involved from the very beginning, it does not even come to that point, because you are a part of that decision.
Right.
So the way you kind of, lead that whole discussion also matters a lot.
Another role which a GC plays, is also to reach out to the corporate management, both, of course, the top management, even the junior management, the mid-level, and to make them aware of all the legal advice that is there, One, how has that participation from the management changed when it comes to legal matters? Is it still confined to the legal team only, that they come to you at the last time Is there a deliberate attempt, proactiveness that, okay, let us do it beforehand, then wait for some crisis to come? How is the culture within organizations shaping up? I mean, what is it like in today's times?
So, two things. One is that definitely, as the general counsels, we are privy to a lot of confidential information and confidential strategy, which cannot be shared across the board. And therefore, only the top people needs to be involved into that. And that kind of a discussion happens in a very, very confidential manner, because those are strategic decisions and confidential discussions. But barring those confidential discussions, there is a flow of communication which now goes. So I'll give you my own example. In my department, we analyze a particular issue well in advance, and then we debate within our team, we debate with the key people in the business, and then we send that communication to the entire workforce. So this arbitration discussion which was happening, this NN global judgment which has come, now this has a ramification in the organizations, the way the appointment letters are being issued, which is not stamped and it has an arbitration clause, the way purchase orders are issued by the organization, which is not stamped. Now these have ramification now in view of this judgment. Now we will analyze this judgment, we'll prepare a note, we will talk to the management, and then at an appropriate time we will enter into a discussion, collaborate with the business and communicate. The same thing goes when it comes to compliances, rules, regulations, new notification coming up. So the flow of communication is now much, much stronger and much, much larger, where entire workforce is engaged in that particular issue.
Wonderful. Thanks to the new technology also, I'm sure, right? Ms. Budhiraja, in the startup space, is still an evolving space on many fronts, when it comes to the legal issues, for example. There are still new developments, and the litigation is still kind of coming up to match that, change. How is it within startup culture to make them aware? Because startup culture is also an informal culture, we kind of pride ourselves on an informal culture, while as an corporate has a very structured culture. Is it challenging within startup culture to make them aware, reach out to them, how they are doing in their organization, for example, what he spoke about?
So I've never worked in a organized, as you said, setup. I can only talk about, the comparison will be difficult for me to draw, because I've never worked, I've only worked in startups, and that too regulated startups. So thankfully, RBI comes up with its whip, and no founder, no promoter, no business leader can do anything about it. And this has been actually, been reinforced of late a lot in the last couple of years. I was hearing the last discussion panelists as well, that the regulator basically does give signals. There are discussion papers which come. There are industry bodies which discuss those papers. It is not suddenly that the regulator is coming up with some, law which is like so harsh. So if basically you make your founders, your business leaders aware of those discussions, starting from the discussion paper, it is the duty of the legal team, especially the general counsel. I think the work becomes extremely easy. Of course, we have to manage on a daily basis, on a business as usual basis. There will be constantly changing goalposts. But regulation is black and white. And you have to make the business leaders aware that this is coming, so that, suddenly you open the Pandora's box, there are business disruptions, then that is not taken very nicely. So we, as general counsels, we as legal leads in the organization have to be aware, we have to keep our eyes and ears open as to where the industry is going, apart from, of course, the black letter of regulation, as you say. So that is something which, which we have to develop. And of course, then it becomes, of course, not totally seamless, but it does help. Because even, if you've told your founder, okay, this is going to come, maybe that time he says it's a discussion paper, but he has heard you out. So, you've bounced it past him. So when it comes eventually after a year, so if you see, I work very closely with the regulator. I was leading policy also for my company. So there is a gap of at least 1 year sometimes between the discussion paper and between the actual law when it comes. So, to have that constant dialogue with your product team, with your business leads as to what is coming, I think that really helps. Of course, you have to deal with the constantly changing goalposts, but because I have been in a regulated industry most of the time, it has to be within the regulatory guardrails. Whatever experimentation you want to do, there are grays, but there are blacks and whites also. So
Right.
that's
Not an easy space to navigate. Ms. Bedi, give me the Philips story when it comes to proactive reach out on legal matters. How does it kind of happen in your organization?
So Philips or not, one of my mentors early in my, starting off my in-house journey, actually told me, if you're not on the speed dial of the CEO, you don't exist. And I think I take that as the benchmark of, being the conciliary, being the confidant of the person, who's running the business, commercial business in an organization, to be that right hand or left hand, whatever you call it, to be that person where there is a question in his mind and he calls you first. And I think that's where we need to reach. I think I will also pick on no longer a role of an absolute lawyering anymore, right? You have to have a skin in the game with the business people. You need to wear the strategic cap, but also be, and I would say this with a lot of emphasis, be the conscience keeper of the organization. Everybody wants to do the business, but you make sure that the business is being done the right way. So I think our roles have to elevate, and no one else is going to do that for us. We have to do it ourselves. So I believe that communication from that perspective is how accessible you are to all your business leaders, how you're able to find, not just fix the problem, but don't let the problem happen kind of an approach. And then you need support of a lot of external players, a lot of external law firms, people who are sitting out there. We reach out to them to sort of be the intermediaries between, how do we marry a business problem with a legal problem, right? And they bring in some expertise and we kind of tell them what the business is. While if you have to talk to me about the gaps that I have when I go out, looking for a law firm, I can speak at length on that as well.
I have a question on that.
Yes, but I think it's important to recognize that we no longer this, you're just not a lawyer anymore. You're just more than a lawyer when you're in-house.
Wonderful. Miss Mehtani, what are the bigger challenges, in-house in a corporate, when it comes to engaging with different stakeholders, kind of reaching out to them proactively? Are there any kind of gaps that need to be addressed?
No, I don't think so. There are gaps. I mean, it boils down to a lot of collaboration. Businesses are transforming, and the way progressive businesses are, and you being, the legal department of a progressive business, it is all about collaboration. And if you are a business enabler, if you are solution oriented, I don't see any challenges, because I'll just give you an example. When, say, a business review is happening in different, you're participating along with different functions or departments, and this is a personal view that I have, is that there's no one presentation by a department where you see that somewhere or the other the legal team hasn't touched upon that. That's where the role of the legal department comes out distinctly. There are various committees or groups in the organization where the legal team members are participating, and if there are, then it makes it evident that their solution oriented mindset would have gotten them there. The other business functions want them there. And I clearly see it happening, so there aren't any challenges. Of course, you have to, if there are, you have to solve for them. It's upon you to solve for them.
Mr. Sundram, one of key functions, of course, of a GC is relationship with stakeholders within and outside, outside, say, with the law firms outside. And we spoke about, even when you kind of recruit a law firm and to kind of help you, what factors do you look at? First of all, let me go into it. And how do you manage this inside-outside relationship? What are the best ways to manage and develop those key relationships into an open kind of where you get the feedback, you can open channel, sort of equation?
Yeah, so over a period of time, this relationship between in-house lawyers and external law firm have evolved and changed also. I remember a couple of days back, there was a discussion I was doing with a few partners of a law firm, and it was an intense discussion about the entry of the foreign law firms in India and how is it going to impact the existing law firms, the legal business of the Indian law firms. There were a lot of apprehensions coming up. And I told them that, guys, you are missing one important point. You are just focusing on the foreign law firms, likelihood of them coming here, setting up their offices, and the impact that they will have, the competition gets impacted, and the business they may lose. Why aren't you seeing the whole growth of the in-house team which is happening in the corporate sector as one of your competitors? The situation has changed. In last 10 years, if you see the corporate sectors, we have a team of competent lawyers within the organizations. There are a lot of things that we are doing now. 10 years back, it was being done by the external law firms. Therefore, we are one of your biggest competitors today. We are equally knowledgeable, we are equally competent. We understand the business more than you because we are very close to the business. Therefore, why don't you see us as one of your biggest competitors? Now, having said that, the relationship is important. The relationship matters because as law firms, the kind of wider, diversified knowledge and experience that you guys have, we do not have that because you deal with multiple set of clients. The kind of problems that you deal with every day, probably we don't deal with that kind of a problems. So our depth is not that strong. Relationship is changing. It's deeper, but it is changing. It is evolving. And that's what newer firms, old firms are now understanding. It is not that they don't understand. They are understanding it, but that's a major, major change that has happened. We collaborate a lot with the law firms in terms of intense discussions on some of the evolving laws, some of the new judgments that come up, some of the notification that comes up, and how is it going to impact the business. So we collaborate. We work as one team. There is no doubt about that. We work as one team.
Thus you invited them to look at you as competitors, but I'll take their point, of course, after this question. I would love to invite some, counterpoints from their side. Yes, if I can get your point, Ms. Budhiraja, on.
For me, I've always worked in very lean teams, 4-5 member teams. So the role of the external counsel and regulated businesses, the role of the external counsel becomes very important. Earlier, of course, it was only crisis management, but now again, it starts somewhere from the beginning, where we kind of, in our conscience don't want that crisis to really happen. For instance, I have applied for a license of a payment aggregator, on behalf of my company. I want to know what the RBI is thinking, being just a nodal officer or, having the nodal officer in my team and he talking to a particular person in the RBI, that doesn't help. We want to understand what the regulator is thinking, if they have some doubts. Sometimes it doesn't come, they're not very, very forthcoming about it. You have to kind of read between the words. Law firms do help us in that a lot. Of course, I was associated with a company which tried to hit the capital markets. We tried to kind of go for an IPO. The kind of collaboration you need with the external law firms when you are going for an IPO, it's amazing. At a point, with the partner I was talking to, we don't talk to our spouses that much or our kids that much. At night, 2 o'clock, in the morning, 6 o'clock, it's like a mammoth activity that you're engaged in. And the whole company and even the external counsels, they have just one vision. There is just one target that we are moving towards. So I think, of course, that evolution has come, and that has come for the good, just from being a crisis manager. Even an external law firm has become, an external law firm partner has become like a business enabler for us, I would say.
Ms. Bedi, your point on, how do we build this equation, how do you manage it well, your, relationship with outside counsel? Does it get complex at times? How do you handle that part?
I have a saying, and I use it quite often with my team, is that the external counsel's output is as good as internal counsel's briefing. And I always believe that, the bridge that we need to create, because we are seeking counsel on a legal advice and a point of law, but marrying it with the business is a sole endeavor that can only happen when we collaborate well. And I think I have been very fortunate to work with some of the most fantastic law firm partners in my career throughout, that have not just helped me preserve the value for the organization, but create value as well. So, and I always have those statistics when we have to benchmark ourselves against any other legal department externally. We always say, this is the value preserved, this is the value created, right? And we really, I'm very cynical about it as well. And I don't think that can be achieved if I don't have these partners in crime, where I can just pick up the phone and ask a question, and then they're up and about. And where I think I need more, and where I struggle is when there is a very, very fixated mindset on looking at a problem only from a legal standpoint, right? No business wants to do anything illegal. I don't think multinational organizations want to flout the law at all. But then they also need to find practical solutions to their problems. And which is where I think there's tweak in the mindset required. And Mr. Sundram alluded to it, that you should see us as our competitors. And I do believe that we are slowly picking on the edge, and you guys are a little bit slow there. So I think you need to buck up, because the marrying of the business with the law and how to get that commercial success in is where your values will also count tomorrow. And the more you just side on the law and not focus on the business, the more challenging it would be. So I think if there are lawyers who really want to make it happen and be proactive, and I have people, I work in a very regulated industry. Medical devices is an extremely regulated industry. I've always been in regulated industries. Before that, I was with alcohol. So
Another regulated, highly regulated.
Yeah, but both recession-proof though. So, but the thing is that I have always had people who saying, this is coming in 3 months, Pooja. Watch out for it. So I love that partnership, and I think we need more of that.
Wonderful. Ms. Mehtani, 3 of your panelists, saying that, of course, there's a lot of value add, and plus the in-house teams are emerging in a big way and posing competition. Your take on this complex relationship inside stakeholders and outside, is it easy to manage? How do you navigate that?
Inside, I've already spoken about.
External,
law firms, I think it's a, it's a complementary relationship. So, and definitely it has evolved, as has a general counsel's role evolved. Similarly, this relationship has evolved and will keep on evolving. I mean, I agree with what Pooja also said, that, where the general counsel's role is more attuned to, marrying the legal and the commercial view and then helping the business. I think that's where the general counsel plays the role of bridging that gap. But, it depends on the relationship that you have with the external counsel, how you build on it, and how you keep them posted and they help you in certain transactions. That's very vital. So it in a way all revolves around how do you collaborate and how do you manage the relationships. I think external counsels also understand that their role is evolving, and they're also loosening up. So, but it's complementary to each other. Yeah.
External counsels here, the legal firms. Anyone having any question I can take at this stage? Then I'm going on to my last question. Yes, sir.
The overall thought and sentiment of all the panelists here that you all are business enablers and you have to enable business growth while of course ensuring that you're on the right side of law. One question for all of you, of course, there is this overarching issue that unfortunately general counsels do not have attorney-client privilege in India, which is, I do personally feel something that Bar Council definitely needs to act up. And I think it's absolutely paramount because all of you are playing a very critical role internally of advising and ultimately all these business departments are your clients and you're advising and there are issues of fiduciary responsibility. So one is this issue of attorney-client privilege that I think general counsels absolutely need. But the other issue is that if you look at the US and typically India is always 10 years behind and we typically follow the trend. What we are seeing with a lot of US corporates particularly is that the general counsel is now no longer reporting even to the CEO. The general counsel is reporting directly to the board because he or she has a fiduciary responsibility which is much more than just maximizing revenue or maximizing bottom line. Governance is a key aspect of it. I don't know if there's a view of the panelist on this particular tricky one that, earlier I know that a lot of general counsels unfortunately used to end up reporting to the CFO, which, was absolutely ridiculous if you were to ask me. Is that something that's changing and, what are your thoughts of how that will play out?
I
You
can
can
go
have multiple
first.
answers, yes.
All right. So attorney-client privilege, absolutely, and I think we're fighting hard for it. I think we deserve it. And also, we also, we have a way around, right? You guys exist to help us there. We take full advantage of that part as well. But it is an important aspect, the attorney-client privilege, and especially if you're working with international companies, multinationals, if you're listed on several countries' stock exchanges, all this comes into play quite significantly. So that's absolutely on merit that attorney-client privilege needs to be established for us, but till the time it's not coming, you guys, we rely on you. The other part is on, the fiduciary responsibility. I alluded to it in the beginning itself, that I think we do wear a strategic hat and we are part of the business and we are all in for the commercial success of the organization, but we wear a different hat of a conscience keeper as well. And that's our responsibility. And if you see large size progressive organizations, to your point, do not have reporting lines. I don't even report into the market today. So I report directly, independently up there because it's important that we remain business lawyers, but it's also equally important that we have an independent view of how the business is being conducted with all the issues that we see today on sustainability, on ESG, on the ways the companies are approaching a business problem. You have these issues around worker conditions, human rights. Yeah, exactly. It's going to be even more, and we are all going to get accountable in how our companies are operating in certain markets, in especially emerging market like India, right, where we have this tendency of grays and chalta hai. That is no longer going to be negotiable anymore. So from that perspective as well, I think it's going to go more linear. I think it's going to be an independent oversight that would be required. In most organizations I know of, Fortune 50, Fortune, strategically, they have placed supervisory board to be the reporting of general counsels and governance councils as well. So I think it's going to go more and more. And India as well, I think ESG reporting is going to get very soon mandatory, and greenwashing and criminal offenses around that are also going to come very soon. So I think companies need to start thinking about it already.
So my thought on the point of privilege, definitely because of that Supreme Court ruling where in-house lawyers are treated as an employee because you draw salary, the employer pays you a salary, and there is an employer-employee relationship. Therefore, we are not at par with an advocate as defined under the Advocates Act 1961. But having said that, on the point of privilege, we know that what happened to one of the prominent law firm in India, the privilege was completely set aside, right? The attorney-client privilege was ignored. We are also hearing now that lawyers would be required to disclose the money laundering aspects of their client under the PMLA Act. So where is the question of client-attorney privilege coming up? So purely from an Indian context, this is one arena where government need to respect the provisions of the Evidence Act, and client-attorney privilege should truly be respected. The second component, as in-house lawyers, definitely we have been fighting with the government and the Bar Council saying that please accord the same status that you accord to an advocate, because if you see the whole A.K. Balaji judgment, we say that we are practicing the profession of law, right? We are also doing the same thing which an advocate is doing, except the appearance before the court, but we are also practicing the profession of law in courts. So therefore, we are talking about according the same status that an advocate has as in-house counsels. Now, in terms of, to answer your question on the corporate governance part, things have definitely evolved. I remember the days when in-house counsels or the GC were reporting to the commercial head or a CFO. That has changed. Now, people are reporting to the number one, the country head of the country. Are we reporting to the board? Many of us are not today. Do we have an interface with the board? The answer is yes. I'm going 2 steps further. I'm saying that as a general counsel, we are responsible for the corporate governance. I'm saying that why don't you make us accountable under the Companies Act, where we are accountable for the corporate governance, same as a statutory auditor is accountable, same as a company secretary is accountable. So give us that accountability. You give us that empowerment, give us that statutory recognition, and then make us accountable for corporate governance. We are ready to take, because that is what we are doing day in and day out. So make us accountable, and we are ready to take that accountability. You know, that's the...
Thank you for elaborating. You have a point you want to make?
It was just to add to,
Yeah.
I think they've covered, just another point, and agreeing with Pooja that if not reporting to the board, of course, where general counsels are company secretaries, you know, they also have an interface with the board. And also the reporting lines have changed, definitely changed. You report in, you know, to the legal hierarchy also, and that makes quite a lot of difference. You know, so apart from reporting to the country head or to the managing director, that really helps.
So it's no longer a catch-up now. I think we are also making our own strides, right? If I understand it well. But thank you so much, my panelists, you know, for sharing all your thoughts, and thank you for that brilliant question, and thank you to all the ones who are here listening intently. I think we're done. It's almost just a minute left. I just want to, you know, thank you for sharing your insights. It's been a great panel.